Alright guys, it's Galachad, and today we're going to do a rec review of, in my opinion, the worst swordsman rapier fencer I have ever seen. So let's just jump right into it. We've got the fencer in question right here. He's in the all black. He's trying to copy my style a little bit. Color's a little wrong. But he's doing rapier and dagger, which is my specialty. Which is to say that my knowledge of it is pedestrian, and I know nothing about anything else, really. So we got our salutes here. His opponent has a case of rapiers, kind of good stance. The fencer that we're looking at looks like he's got 2 feet pointing forward towards his opponent, so he's kind of on the balls of his left foot, or just on the toes, basically. Got a low sword position, forward dagger, kind of typical of like a black tiger-esque style. Vaguely Neapolitan. Whoa, what was that? So there's already something wrong here. We can see that the fencer kind of thrusts up into the sky for his extension. So his arm's fully extended right now. And it was worse, like, if we can just go back 1 frame, but I don't know how to do that. But his lunge is basically completed. His sword's extended, and yet the point is shooting towards the sky. So there's going to have to be a correction downward in order to land a thrust. The problem with that is that one, like, you're kind of off position, obviously, but also you're going to have to take time away from your attack in order to re-correct your point here. And it doesn't make it, but arguably, like, at the end of his extension, he probably could have hit there. But due to that weird sword movement, he missed his opportunity. Like, the tempo is just not there anymore. And, okay, so this double sword guy parries his attack, and then he goes for a cut. And our fencer expected a thrust, so he moved his dagger over. But as you can see, he moved his dagger quite a bit to his right, and the blade of his dagger is kind of pointed off to the side now, and it opened up that entire side to his opponent. What would have been better is to kind of like lift the dagger, if you're going to use that as your defense, into the opponent's like sword, basically, so that they have to like kind of take a little bit more time to try to cut somewhere else so you can see where they're going. What would have been a little bit better, if you know that you're going to be encountering a cut, is to kind of lift your sword into a parry instead of your dagger. It's going to be a little bit easier to catch. And any defense with a dagger, especially if you've got short arms, it's going to like kind of impede your vision a little bit, because you're going to have to really stick your arm out there. So that's a problem as well. Looks like he eats it to the chest and arm at the same time. All right, now they're yapping.
Yeah, go for 3.
All right, now we're at it again. All right, fencer settling into his low position here. Kind of moving his sword around. Stuff's happening. Not a good camera angle. We're just going to ignore that pass. Looks like he hit his opponent somehow. Really close distance there. Weird parry again. Like, you can see the keons are just like straight up, which means that the blade is pointing to the right. Not a great parry, in my opinion. Okay, looks like after the parry of the thrust, he kind of like jumped back because he wasn't expecting it, and his opponent like restarts another attack, this time with a really big winding cut, putting his left sword down into the ground, so kind of like ignoring it. And now the fencer is doing the correct thing, which is move back a little bit, so that the main target now is going to be the arms. And if he tries to go any deeper, it's going to be a lot easier to catch on that dagger, which is what happens, and then he shoots around. But again, he does it with that weird flick thing. He could have just like thrusted straight after that parry, like up into his opponent's body, but he kind of lifts up his point and then goes over and kind of flicks it down. So not a great thrust, honestly. But his opponent takes it because he's a nice guy. Okay, so that's a pretty good move to do against Case. If you notice your opponent doesn't like try to like attack into you. Like stop thrusts are pretty strong with Case, obviously, because you have two, so you can kind of defend with one and attack with the other one that is not in a useful line. But if our opponent doesn't move like really quickly, or if he parries with both swords, shooting between the middle can be really good. And we see that right there. Our opponent kind of lifting both the swords as if to catch it. It's a little bit too slow. Probes to the arms. Good to kind of like check the opponent's reactions, see what they want to do. Whoa, what is going on here? Okay, it looks like he's binding with his dagger down, which against Case is especially dangerous because that other hand can be shooting as you're binding one of the other swords. But also, like, it's just your dagger is not in position, right? So it's kind of like it just looks like you're being lazy here and like doing whatever just to like annoy your opponent. And unless it's like an obvious invitation, which again, I don't think is great because they have two swords, it'll be really hard to parry normally anyway. Giving that much to your opponent, I don't think is a good idea. He's also binding pretty ineffectively. It's not really getting him much besides provoking his opponent to do something. And this time it looks like he tries to attack while his opponent is cutting with one arm. This is actually honestly not a bad attack. So it looks like it's kind of attacking towards his left sword into the opponent while they're winding up their right hand cut. The unfortunate thing is it looks like it hits into the guard, so it's kind of parried by that sword just by it moving, and then he gets that cut after. Which again, with that sloppy dagger position, is really easy to deceive here. Like now that we see that the blade is kind of pointed off to the side, if he attacks straight to the head here, he has a line there, but he can also like go around the head and get to the arm here. But it does make it to the head, it looks like. Okay, sitting up a little bit closer now. Yeah, too close. So right here, the moment this next step is taken, you should attack. So this attack was correct. But the problem is, instead of attacking straight, you put your dagger first. But you've already moved your body forward. So the dagger timing is a little bit behind. And since the shot did hit, we can only assume it's because the dagger wasn't effectively binding out that sword. Because he stepped in with the dagger, most likely in the position he wanted it to be, right? But the opponent still got the shot inside, right? We basically got close enough without a good bind with the dagger and gave our opponent an opportunity to attack with just an extension of the arm, which is going to be usually twice as fast as a normal lunge. So you have half the time to react. And if you're not already doing something to your opponent's blade, you're going to get hit most likely. Which is what happened here. All right. New opponent here. It's got a buckler. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was bad for sure. So he's doing like weird shots to the arm here, as you can see. But this one is obviously, even if our opponent had not moved, like this was not going anywhere. And we're recovering really slow here, and we're offering our blade to our opponent. We're basically placing the weak of our sword into their strong for them. And if you're not doing that on purpose, that's really bad. And this fencer probably wasn't, because he does it again, and our opponent this time now that he sees the second thing happen once again, takes the blade this time and shoots right across to his head, which is moved in because our fencer has not just attacked, but also moved his head close. If this was just a probe, that's a major mistake, because you're giving your opponent an opportunity to hit you that you weren't expecting just because you're probing into their hand. It wasn't even an attack that you were doing. So it's basically like high risk, no reward in this case. And then we eat a shot to the face for it. So horrible tactical decision there. Let's see if he learns anything. All right, he's trying for it again. All right, so that was a lot better. So now if our opponent is staying in place and their sword is not moving, we can get our dagger into a preemptive position to catch it. And this dagger extension compared to the last one is better because, one, it moves first before our legs, or at least around like the same time, slightly earlier. And this way, our dagger is already in a good position to defend us before we commit too much of our body. And because of that, we easily get the blade here, like our fencer here has gotten our opponent's blade off to his dagger hand, really away from his body, and is now given a shot straight into our opponent. And this is really great, especially against rapier and buckler fencers, because trying to capture a thrust with a buckler can be pretty hard, but especially if your opponent is really close and only has to extend. Right? So we got our fencer here, gets that sword, and then he's ready to extend here. So the lunge is completed. He hasn't extended his arm yet. And now our opponent has to try to defend something that is only going to have the time of an arm extension, which is going to be near impossible. So he gets a shot to the opponent's leg there, it looks like. Okay, so this is a lot better than the previous strategy, trying to bind out the sword. Not a super effective bind, but still a lot better. And then once you get that bind, if you have a straight shot to the arm, you can take it, which in this case does work. Still pretty risky though. You're still offering kind of like you're weak to your opponent. So if they had parried this well, they could probably have found you out and tried to like launch a counterattack, which might have landed. But in this case, if it hit, then that was fine. But a straighter shot, one that doesn't like glide down your opponent's blade, probably would have been a little bit better. We kind of like copy that same attack to the other side as well here. So on the outside of our sword, we attack towards the opponent's arm, it looks like. And our opponent is unluckily unable to hit us, most likely because our fencer here has a longer sword. And kind of just also collides with the guard there. Okay. Okay, perfect. So our opponent now kind of, I guess, trying to surprise our fencer here, has attacked straight into our fencer. But again, he's kind of done it with the sword not going in a straight line, so it does run into the dagger's keons before it extends. We'll tire him out if we can. Right. So if our opponent here had attacked while pushing their point down into a straight line into our fencer here, he may have had a better chance, but he kind of moved his entire sword forward without thrusting, I guess. And so just ran into the dagger here. And again, we're in that same position where now a simple arm extension can hit. And again, with the buckler, that's going to be super hard to defend. Okay, it looks like we're up against that double-handed fencer again. Fencer here is probing to the leg. Really dangerously, by the way. Especially with Case, attacking the leg like that slowly, it gives you, or gives your opponent your arm, right? And you really have to either be ready to defend it with your sword or have your dagger in a very great position to capture any sword thrust to the hand there. So that time it looked like our opponent missed. And then they went for that attack to the hand again for whatever reason. And this time, actually, ate a riposte. So that was much better. So it looks like an extension to the leg. This time really far committed. Probably like definitely a feint. And then the opponent attacks right where you want them to. You capture it because you're expecting it, and then attack back. And you only got the arm, but that's not too bad. That definitely could have gone to the body though. All right, looks like Distressa acid guard from the opponent here. Again, those weird binds. And then a beat. So I guess you've noticed that like once you bind, your opponent does lift their sword. That does give you a tempo to strike them. And we were lucky here also because it looks like he was trying to go for your sword while you were attacking. So it ends up hitting like, okay, I guess your arm instead of hitting your head. Okay, again, those ineffective binds. Pretty precarious bind there. Like, no movement of the body at all. You should at least step forward while binding and then step back to retreat. Because if you bind and your opponent kind of goes around to hit your hand, if you're closer, your dagger can actually pick it up. And that gives you a very, very good attack. But if you do it from really far away, the ability for your dagger to like capture their blade is really, really low. They have to capture it at a perfect time, right when it's about to hit your hand, which is not great. So step forward, but then retreat back. Doing it from a static position here is a little bit dangerous. Okay, we're going to try that feint to the leg thing again, I guess. Oh, that was an actual shot to the leg. Okay. It looks like we definitely could have eaten a shot to the head there, though. So if your opponent does pull back their swords, which this opponent has done a couple of times, a shot to the leg can be good because you're not expecting them to stop thrust you, basically. So that's why that worked. But that was high enough on the thigh where you definitely could have gotten a torso shot there. All right, we got SCA rules here. So our opponent is like down on his knee. Yeah. And just taking advantage of the fact that you can recover and your opponent cannot. So just attacking and recovering over and over again. Kind of a good tactic to use against neat opponents. Kind of cheeky, unfun perhaps. But, you know, our fencer here is probably not known for his honesty based off of his fencing style. Okay, more binds. Probes to the sword hand. All right, so we've gotten into an exchange of a parry riposte with a case fencer, which can be good if you can get your first attack, but you don't want to go into a full exchange with them this way because the tempo that you take to make one attack, they can fill that with two attacks from them. So it becomes really hard to actually do a fair exchange of parries and ripostes with an opponent with case. And in this case, we parried his sword and we try to riposte back. And it looks like it does make it, actually. But then we eat a cut from our opponent because they can make two attacks, remember. So they've attacked with their right and then cut with their left.
Wow. Yeah, some of the videos I've seen, it looked. I thought I saw like 5-on-5, 6.
All right. We're just doubling.
I thought I saw like 5-on-5 or 6.
We love running into points. Yeah, it looks like you've kind of guessed the position of his sword wrong when going for that dagger bind. And it becomes really dangerous to dagger bind. One of the biggest risks that you take is if your opponent knows you're about to dagger bind their sword with a lunge and they retract their sword. So you'll miss with your dagger and then they can just shoot any position with your against your extended dagger. So they can go down, they can go up. It becomes really hard because you actually didn't capture them. And it's really hard not to double in this situation right here because they shot under your blade or under your dagger blade into your chest and you did get your shot, but like it could have been a more masterful strike if you had gotten his sword, obviously. So if your opponent is doing that, you're going to have to use your sword a little more rather than your dagger. If they leave their sword out while you lunge, then it might be good to use your dagger. But if they pull it back, it's super, super risky unless you've got massive orangutan arms. All right, new opponent here. Looks like they're left-handed. Kind of cool looking dagger. Matches their rapier. Immensely drippy. Okay. Shots to the outside are pretty strong with an opposite-handed relationship here. So this is a great position. This is not going to be seen in a HEMA context probably at all. But if you can get your opponent, like an opposite-handed opponent, to switch to their other hand, it gives you two advantages. One, they're fencing with a hand they're not as used to fencing with. But then two, you're more used to fighting right hand against right hand in this case. So now you have two advantages. And our opponent is opting to keep his dominant foot forward. So it's kind of a weird position. So most opponents that fight this way will now attack with the pass to get a very long attack. It is quite slow, though. And then occasionally, I think you can also attack without a pass and just leave your opposite foot forward to kind of do a twisting long lunge, or not really a lunge, but a very long extension. So I think your extension with the opposite foot forward is actually longer than on the same. I'm not going to go into it right now why I believe that is, but let's just say that that's my belief. Okay, they can attack that way. The problem is they can't lunge with their foot very effectively with this attack. So I don't think it's a very meta style to fence against, but it's just something they can do. So if our opponent is pretty bad on this hand, you kind of want to do like more complex actions to attack them, because it's unlikely they'll be able to catch up to you or like fend off against a very difficult or a very high level complex attack. Okay, looks like a disengage. Not the most complex, but it can get the job done. And yeah, that's how we got it. So it looks like multiple disengages, kind of just a wiggle of the sword, and then a shot to the inside. Okay, so our partner here is kind of thrusting with their leg first, it looks like, and then they extend forward with their hand. It's kind of like the opposite way that our fencer has been flicking his tip up to go down. I don't even know what got hit there, I'm gonna be honest. Okay, so our fencer got hit here in the chest. Oh no, he hit the other opponent in the chest, putting him in a parry riposte exchange. So this was pretty smart. So first, we have that parry of the initial attack. Our opponent has missed his dagger bind on our sword, right? You kind of jump back a little bit too far here. This could have been done in this touch right here, or this parry riposte right here, but you got a little bit too much distance between you two, right? And you kind of waited a little bit before going for your false attack. So this is pretty smart, especially against very good opponents that you think you may have an advantage over in infighting. So and once you've parried their attack, instead of giving them a true riposte, you actually feint again. So your opponent thinks they're safe and then tries to riposte your parry riposte, if that makes sense. And then you parry that, and since they're not going to be as expectant of a parry riposte this time because they've done it twice now, and they think they've got you, and you get a much easier shot from there. Okay. One thing that I would say, whenever you're fighting against a left-handed opponent or opposite-handed opponent, you should move your dagger kind of because of that. So it shouldn't be in the same position that you fight right-handers in, unless your dagger's in like a kind of a neutral position, then it doesn't really matter. But let's say like our fencer here, he likes to fence with his left hand kind of off to the side. You should move it a little bit closer to your sword hand because that's where most of the shots are coming from. In an opposite-handed fencing match, you don't, especially in HEMA, you don't see shots to your daggers outside very often. And if you do, it's only because you've moved your dagger to pretty close to your sword. So you want to move your dagger where a lot more of the shots are going to be coming from, and they can get a more aggressive angle on your sword's outside because of their opposite hand. So you're going to want that extra time that you're going to save by moving your dagger a little bit closer. On the flip side, if your opponent doesn't do this and they're opposite-handed to you, you can take advantage of that as well and kind of take more opportunities to attack because it'll be harder for them to defend. And that's probably why our opponent has now got hit in the hand twice. And again, we go for a more complex action this time: extension, disengage, lunge, and attack. Really simple stuff. Okay, kind of a scummy move here. It looks like you just kind of set up, and then the moment you're done setting up, you just launched an attack when your opponent wasn't expecting it, and just got him straight in the head from the outside. But this is also kind of the classic opposite-handed shot. Like you go around their sword, basically, and it's in a position that's really hard for their dagger to get to, and then you just get ready to defend any kind of stop thrust or afterblow they do after that.
It's good practice for broken field stuff.
Okay, I'm going to look at that exchange again. Kind of big bind against that sword there. Kind of force them to the outside, which is really great against a left-handed fencer because now they're kind of bound out and you have a very big advantage because you have the whole inside and they only have the outside now. But they retract. You should have definitely pushed your advantage there. But what? Oh no, he gave that to you. He leaned back and he leaned forward to attack you, but you jumped out. When you've already kind of seen that once you get into those parry riposte exchanges that you will probably win. Like if your opponent is giving you something for free, you have to take it right away. It's as if got sent, you purchased coupons to McDonald's, right? And instead of going to the McDonald's right away and getting that free Big Mac, you leave it in your glove compartment and then you just forget about it until it expires. You got to take advantage of those free passes right away. That's some life and fencing advice right there. You definitely should have actually stayed in and captured this with your dagger.
It's good practice for broken
That would have definitely given you that touch there.
There you go. Redouble.
Okay.
Good job.
Shanking matches, I will say, for the most part, pretty dangerous. It's basically asking for a messy exchange. There's very few instances where you can get a dagger touch very cleanly. I'm not going to go over those right now, but it is possible. But what you just did, that was not it. This is giga dangerous. Like, their dagger could have definitely went to your head at this moment.
There you go.
But they're a good opponent, so they blocked your dagger with theirs.
Good job. I mean, remembering you have it and that it's offensive. Especially when normally it's
Okay,
not.
binding
So
the
far away.
sword. Again, trying to get to force our opponent to the outside. This time, it looks like you kind of did the right thing. You just had kind of bad execution with the dagger there. I didn't quite get the measure right. But if our opponent had not, like, jumped back that far, I think you would have totally got him right there.
Especially when normally it's not.
Looks like you only got his dagger hand instead. Yeah, about right there. Yeah, being in the inside in an opposite-handed relationship gives you a lot more options than your opponent. It's a very nice place to be.
I mean, they're docs, you know. I'm not wearing the loafers anymore.
Well, there's that.
That sounds like
All right, we got some in-fencing yapping going on right now. Going for that feint disengage. Going to be a lot more difficult this time because our opponent is on their main hand. Okay, so I knew that was going to be a problem. So you attempt to parry them with the false of your sword, but against an opposite-handed fencer, I would say actually pushing your knuckles out is a lot better because the angle is more severe. If this is a right-handed fencer and they shot this way, it'd be really hard for them to angle it towards your elbow. But because this opponent is left-handed, he can get that angle, and he does, into your arm here, it looks like.
No, you do not get to go make friends with that German Shepherd. I don't care.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Another good shot against the left hand.
She's acting like a real
All
husband.
right. I would say being closer, like you are right now, is actually maybe throwing away some of your advantage. And the reason why I say that is because your opponent can now do a more simple attack against you. And if you both do simple attacks, your advantage is not as strong. But if your opponent is using their non-dominant hand and you open up the distance a little bit, it opens the door for more complex movements, which is going to be harder for your opponent who is now off their main hand.
Yep, that's a real husky right there. That's the sound they make.
But maybe it's an adjustment to our opponent's like tendency to move backward. Who knows?
No.
It doesn't look like they're prone to attack much in this position anyway, especially with their left foot forward.
Fluffball at home.
Yeah, sniping shots. I guess with a longer sword, this is like kind of acceptable. Okay, our opponent has now moved his right foot forward to match his right hand. And there you go. So opening up that distance a little bit. This is still pretty close, but not too close. They can't hit you really easily with the lunge right here. So an extension here, disengage into the inside is
Steps on these days.
pretty good move.
And, or either the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020.
All right, we got the dagger bind here. Looks like with kind of like flesh-esque foot movement. Or kind of maybe just, I would just call that probably just a normal pass.
Before everything
And then
was in a handbasket.
something happened.
That's
Don't
it,
know.
Andy.
And then he got a new job. He graduated from college, got a new job, and
Okay, now our opponent's trying to now push us to the outside here, it looks like.
so he's only been back out now consistently for a couple weeks. So he was gone.
Yeah,
for
he was mentioning that he just came back for the first time a month
11
ago or
months or
something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any shots like when your opponent kind of holds their blades together, it might seem counterproductive, but shooting like anywhere along that middle position is actually a good idea because they have to choose one of their swords or their daggers to defend. And a lot of the time, your opponents aren't great at deciding and they'll tend to defend with
Saying that he
both.
just came back for
Right.
the first time a month ago
And this time their opponent only uses dagger, but because you went to the leg, it was really hard for them to parry.
Long time.
Really? Gee, see, I was just under the assumption you guys just
Okay.
kept rolling.
In and out when you're fighting against a legged opponent, by the way.
Gotcha. And I did with the...
All right, and that's it. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Happy to do more rec review in the future, especially of your guys' footage. If I try to do any rec review of any advanced fencing, unfortunately, all I'm really going to probably say is good job. That was really cool. One last thing I'm going to say is I want to give a big thank you to Castile Armory, who have kindly sponsored our channel here and our fencing. They're a great company for making your dream competition sword. It's super easy. You just go into whatever sword you want. Looking for rapiers here. And then from there, you just build it yourself. You find out which guard you want, what kind of blades you want, whatnot. And if that doesn't suit you, they also make custom builds as well. Maybe just not at the moment that this video is being posted because they're kind of behind on some stuff. Some new R&D apparently, and probably the other custom orders are already in, but their build your own swords are the ones I use. I don't use any of the custom products, and I absolutely adore my competition set. Get yourself one today. Please give them a look if you can. All right, guys, that about sums it up for today. I hope to see you guys in a tournament out there at some point, and I hope to see your guys' footage so I can do some rec review here as well. And hopefully you can get some good laughs or some good knowledge, most likely the former from these videos. All right, peace out. Goodbye.
Your life is everything. You serve all purpose. You should treat yourself now and give yourself a piece of that oxygen in the ozone layer that's coming up so that you can breathe in this blue trap bubble. Because you know what I'm here for, to worship you, love yourself. I mean that with 100%, with 1,000%.